Thank you, everybody, for coming to our webinar today, Elevate Your Business on the Cloud. We have a special guest. Our guest today is Charlie Merrow. He's the CEO of the Merrow Sewing Machine Company. And he's joined by Rod Butters, who's the President and Chief Operating Officer of Kenandy. They'll be in dialogue with each other from different parts of the country via webcam for about 30 minutes. And then after this session, we'll have time for a Q&A. If you do have questions during the webinar, you can enter them through the GoToWebinar navigation bar. So with that, the webcam is already on, and I'll turn the show over to Rod.
Great. So I want to just start off by saying, first of all, Charlie's one of our early adopters of Kenandy, and has been with us through a lot of changes and evolution of the company and product. And what's interesting is he represented what I think is almost an emerging trend that we're seeing with the customers that are using our product, particularly with small and mid-sized businesses, in that it's almost analogous to what I see going on with the maker movement. Maker movement is about how technology is allowing people to fabricate products in new and fast and innovative ways. And what Charlie's doing is fabricating new businesses in fast and innovative ways by leveraging the new cloud technology. So just to kind of kick things off, though, and kind of give everybody a flavor for what it is you're doing with this, I'd like you to tell a little bit the story about Merrow. Merrow's got this very interesting history of being a family business that I'd say has reemerged as a family business. You and your brother took this over here in the last few years, and I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you and your brother came to reconstitute Merrow, and what it was you thought that was the value or the opportunity of what's essentially a very old business.
Thank you, Rod. I'd be happy to tell you about it, and I want to thank you guys for having me on the call. You are instrumental now to what we're doing out here at Merrow, and I'm happy to talk about Kenandy and all the great things you guys are doing, because you deserve it. Merrow is a 177-year-old company. And in 2004, my brother and I, we bought it out. It was an old manufacturing company making sewing machines that had some terrific assets. It was an international company since 1915, and in 2004, it had become a weak sewing machine manufacturer in a very Asian-oriented manufacturing space, a weak American sewing machine manufacturer. And so Owen and I, my brother and I, we rebuilt the sewing machine part of the company around a very simple concept that we could build machines that would sewing machines that would deliver value to sewn garments, and we created this image of a stitch, a regular stitch, as something which could have a particular value to designers and to industrial processors. And from 2004 until 2008, this was our project, and we did it. I'm proud to say that in 2015 we did business last year in 86 countries around the world, and the business has grown tremendously. It's been a terrific success, and I think that the model for manufacturing, the model for being a manufacturer, was something that we needed to redefine for ourselves in that rebuilding period. And a big part of that was how you organize and manage a company that has a tremendous number of demands on the corporate infrastructure, from making things to supporting things all over the world, and do that in a lean and efficient way. I mean, we were rebuilding a company. So that's the beginning of the rebuilding story. Is a 177-year-old company that we've made relevant and interesting again, and it's vibrant and healthy. But the second part of it is that in 2008, my brother and I decided that a critical part of our next 177 years was going to be to diversify. And we came up with a very aggressive project to build new businesses and to invest in ideas that we had and commercial concepts, and create a diverse group of companies that worked underneath the Merrow brand. And that was, so our current model, our current business is a sewing machine business, plus seven independent groups now, 7 independent commercial projects, and it's been a great success, and entirely oriented around being agile, lean, and effective. We have run this company since 2004 as though tomorrow we were going to face something that would be that would put us out of business. We've never looked at this as having a big, long-standing brand and company that could be around forever. We look at it as something that we have to earn. We have to earn our future, and so we're going to get to the software discussion. But a critical piece of this is how do you do that? And that's where we end up getting into an interesting discussion about how important ERP is for Merrow and how important you guys are.
You know, what you're talking about is really interesting, because in the companies that we work with, it's interesting that it's not just small companies that are finding that they need to surround a core product with other ways of creating business or other ways of creating value. I see this day to day even with very, very large companies, and I think the overall interesting trend, and you said this a minute ago, which is a lot of products in the world today effectively have become commoditized in some way, shape, or form. So a sewing machine in Asia is probably not a lot different from a sewing machine manufactured in where you live in Massachusetts. And it's interesting because even very, very big companies are having that exact same problem, where they have to figure out how they surround the world of products, which is largely commoditized, with some types of services or intellectual property or something different in the business model. So I just think that's interesting. I don't think you're alone in that regard, or anybody is. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about is that I know that in our discussions you said early on, one of the things you said you had to do to basically tool up your company to take on these new challenges was to get an ERP in place. You and your brother said, you know, we got them on this company. Here's one of the first things we're going to do. We're going to go out. We're going to get industrial strength ERP stuff. That's kind of different from what a lot of our mid-market companies are, because most of them come to us from literally QuickBooks and Excel. And so you took that leap, and I'm curious, you know, what was driving that? Why did you think you'd do that, and how'd that go for you?
Yeah, it was terrible, and there's nothing wrong with QuickBooks and Excel. And I think that this is you know the real truth, and the reason to have discussions about it is that if Owen and I could go back and put QuickBooks and Excel in and be successful, we would absolutely do it. Simple is better, in my opinion, and a simple accounting and being able to keep your data in a simple accounting system, to start there, is valuable. When you have something that's big and unwieldy, you can spend a lot of time working on that thing that's big and unwieldy. And the direct answer to your question, Rod, is that when we looked at the demands on our company, I came from a technology background, and my brother is a smart guy, and we both realized that if we had software to do a lot of the things, help us do a lot of the things that we needed to do, we would be a better company. And so the shortest answer is we wanted an integrated system so that sales would be able to see when things were going to be delivered. We wanted our customers to know what was going. We saw the way technology could help us. The mistake we made is then we tried to do it. And there's a whiteboard behind me, and really back in 2005 and 2006, that would have been a better idea on a whiteboard than it was implementing it. We put a big ERP system in, and we had for a company that had 50 employees, 4 of them or 5 of them were dedicated ERP programmers, and they worked with us for 2 years on the worst software I've ever used. And the reason it's not the worst software, it was terrible for us. We're a small company, and we were so focused on trying to make things work, make it work for us, that we had a very difficult time extracting any extra value out of it. And it's I think that if you have an enormous budget, it's possible to staff a project like that and be able to yield value-added pieces. But I submit that we were probably pretty typical of anybody who puts ERP in. It was a big deal. It caused a lot of problems, and even though it fulfilled a lot of the superficial concepts, sales was able to see what was going on in their accounts accounting, and there was visibility through the company. We didn't do anything with it. And this is going to be a critical part of what we talk about with Kenandy, because ultimately we had a successful ERP implementation. By every measure, it went in, it was running, and these sorts of things. But we weren't able to do anything with it other than use it. And that wasn't why we put it in. And it's a really important concept. It's that, yeah, that we put the wheels on the truck and we went out and we were able to go, but we didn't go anywhere we couldn't have gone without it, really. And to this day, even, there are discussions about doing things simply in Excel. There's a better way for us to do it now. And those discussions circle back into a system that lets us do better analysis and come up with better information than we ever can do in an Excel program right now. And that's a hugely different situation. So short answer, it was the right thing to do for the company. It was a terrible thing for us for 4 or 5 years. And we finally found a path that delivers a lot of the vision that we had in 2005, 10 years later.
And it's interesting because, again, I see it from the perspective of even very big companies that when they actually get into these scenarios where they want to innovate something new in a business process or do something different, they find that they can do the standard business flow with their ERP system. And these people spend hundreds of millions of dollars on their ERPs, but as soon as they get out of that standard flow, they need to do something different, or they need to do something different rapidly. So I don't know that your conclusion necessarily applies just to companies your size, because I see this even with guys who have effectively close to unlimited budget, at least relative to where you sit, and it's very interesting to see.
Rod, I want to interrupt, because I think that's kind of central to the problem that we had. Wasn't that ERP was broken. Even though implementation was hard and we got through it, we had a system that did lots of things really, really well. And the problem was that the company we were running and the way we were going to grow required us to be able to adjust it and change. And it was that's where there was absolutely no path. There was no way to add something new or try something new. What we ended up building worked super well. It was totally calcified and completely inflexible. And I think one of the reasons why we're such a good fit with Kenandy is that, paradoxically, we decided that the company needed to be enormously flexible in order to be successful. And that's how we ended up taking a risk and kind of running out with you guys to see if we could make something work, because this calcified ERP system, even though it was running really well, and actually we still keep it running, believe it or not. It sits on an old server and it grinds away, and we mine it for old data. The inability to do anything different and add those business processes that we needed to adjust to was impossible. And whether it was, we couldn't afford it or whatever, the software was definitely not set up to be able to support what we needed to do.
Right. So one of the things I like when you say this is interesting is that when you talk about how you get these new business processes, one of the things I've heard you say is you really map the software to support your business, not change your business to match what the software processes are. And I'm wondering what some of those processes have been that you've been able to create, where you've actually been able to say, hey, the business needs this, and I'd like to have Kenandy actually support it. I think there was one interesting thing you actually did relatively early on, I think, with your repair business.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the thing with Kenandy, which ends up being so different, is that we can have meetings about what we're doing, and what we're doing is not atypical, and we do the same things that every other commercial enterprise does. We try to make stuff and sell it to people, but in the middle there are differences, and our repair program is an example of something that was easy for us to build out in Kenandy and represented a totally different approach to managing part of our business compared to what we were doing before. And very simply, we'll ship sewing machines around the world, and we recognize that in some parts of the world, especially the US, where we had declining support for machines, offering a repair program, a sophisticated repair program that would get their machine back so we could take care of it and replace the local agent who got old and went away, would be strategic for us. logistically, that would have been impossible, and nothing that we would have been able to manage very well. We sat down and looked at the demand on it, or for that type of program, and in a week had created an object in Kenandy that tracked the issuance of a repair ticket, sent a box out to a customer, would bring that box, we'd record that box back in, create a work order for it, repair a sewing machine, and ship it out. And then we were able to report on exactly what went wrong and how things worked out for the customer. And this is a really good example of something that we would have done on a very small scale, because it was something that there was clearly a need for it. But because we were able to build it out and manage it in Kenandy, or in software, we were able to scale it. And it became a very successful program, and from a branding perspective, actually became a really great success for Merrow, because we were doing something to reach out and support people running our equipment that other companies aren't doing or can't do or can't manage. The coolest part of it, though, is that there were no programmers involved. I mean, it was a meeting where people who needed to repair machines sat around and said, here's what we need to do. And then we created it, and we sat down, people program, built it out in Kenandy. Here are all the different things, all the data we want to collect, all the automated workflows. Here's who needs to be emailed when this happens. Here's a way for us to know when something is stalling. Here's a way to do a customer service follow-up that no one has to push a button for. And in a week of not full-time work, in a week of just getting it going, we had something that was serviceable. And then something that we've adopted as a Kenandy kind of programming protocol is that we rapidly make something and release it, we use it, and then we change it. And so that repair program probably went through 3 iterations of not critical stuff, but where we added information or we changed workflows until we settled on something that then it really hasn't been updated or changed for a year and a half, something like that. And so the great part of the story is not it's not that there's a repair program at Merrow. The great part of the story is there was this demand on the business, and instead of us tracking it in Excel or not doing it at all, or coming up with some other duct tape scenario, we built out a thorough and durable thing that takes care of the business for us, and that is entirely what you guys did. That's Kenandy. Oh, and then the best part of all of that, from my brother's perspective, who runs the company, he runs operations, is that he can report on every bit of it. So in a year and a half, he has enough data to be able to see why machines are coming in, how quickly we turn things around. The reporting around that object is so thorough and complete that we're able to then adjust what we do from a promotions perspective and how we support it and how we resource it in a way that we couldn't have thought of doing before. Which is, go back to the discussion about the previous ERP. Reporting in the previous ERP was really, really hard, to do out-of-the-box reporting. The reporting here is as flexible as the software, and really one of the key insights for why Kenandy is valuable is that we are able to see how our business is doing and look at this data all the time and do it and look at it in different ways and do it without anybody else coming in and helping. I don't think we never call you guys to help get reports. We never need to do
it's amazing.
Yeah. And so that's a great example of something. Mapping our businesses do stuff, and what we're able to do with Kenandy is say, hey, we're doing this stuff. Let's measure it and document it. And we are so disciplined about not using Excel. Use Excel when there's some big data analysis, like you want to do a big batch VLOOKUP against something, but don't ever use it to track or manage. Never. We run our engineering. Is run through objects in Kenandy. I don't know if you know that, but we built all of our engineering stuff is now in Kenandy, linked over to the items. Yeah, it's really cool. We do all of our stitch sample stuff, which is basically product development. It's all linked to opportunities in Salesforce, and then prioritized. And this is pretty cool. Work orders are prioritized based on the probabilities of the opportunities. So if the sales guys have something hot, that product development thing pushes much faster, and we don't, we manage it by managing the sales guys and their opportunities, and then the people who need to do good work don't have to sit through terrible meetings where where they're trying to figure out what to do. They're just able to run a report and say, okay, these are the deals that we think are going to get closed, so let's spend more time developing those products. And that's, it's that type of thing. It's that flexibility. But that's really the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's all the little stuff. It's the workflows that trigger emails to people saying, hey, take a look at this thing or that thing, and how flexible we are to try those things. And if they don't work, we kill them.
That's great. I love hearing this, because one of the things that we've always had as a guiding principle in Kenandy is that there's a lot of things we think through in terms of how we actually engineer the core of the product, how we engineer the core of the ERP, but we always focus on making sure that the information model in the system is simple and understandable, so that the kinds of things you're describing are still easy to do. So, we'll have complex things like the, lot tracking, traceability, being able to track install base, all these kinds of things. But one of the things that's been just cool for us about working with the cloud, and again, one of the things we talk about is, we've built this thing from the ground up specifically to take advantage of the cloud technology, is that we've been able to keep the information model simple. I don't know, how much you got involved in like the old ERP, but a lot of the ERPs in the past really had this proliferation of tables. As they had more functionality, they added more tables, the reports get more complicated, figuring out where the data actually is. And it's fun to hear you talk about being able to do these things very directly, because we've been able to embody that complexity of an ERP in something that has a very understandable information model, and it's great to hear that. One of the things that's been interesting to me too is that you do these things where you talk about it really enables a real flow through the business. It's something that's big, like designing new stitches, designing new capabilities, figuring out what the needle's going to look like. And this is exciting stuff. I want you to talk just real quickly about an example you told me about the other day, which I thought was a great example of not just using it for these big animal things, touching operations, but just something you did very tactically, very quickly to support a trade show.
Yeah. So, and really quickly, because I think we're going to run out of time, and Stuart's going to start to tell me to stop talking. We were leaving for a trade show in Germany, and the sales team got together and looked at what we were going to do and how we were going to do it, and realized that the mistakes we made in the past were that we spent a lot of time talking to people, and we weren't able to follow up very quickly. And we met in the morning, and by the time we left in the evening, we built out an object to track everybody that we spoke to at the trade show in real time, and automatically email them as we were, so while we were talking to them, somebody entered an email in, they would get an email right away. The office, sales in the office, saw who we were talking to. The information of if they were an existing customer or not was populated in the object on an iPad sitting at the trade show booth, so we were able to have these intelligent conversations with people. And what we ended up with, the shortest story is, we ended up communicating back to every single person that we met at the trade show the same day we met them, in an automated way, and then in a personal way, if they were an existing account update, the projects we were working on with them, and notes from the discussion at the trade show 2 days later. And when we flew back and we got back from Germany, all of the work of taking care of the investment we made at that trade show, all those new customers, had been done, and we were able to focus on the 220 opportunities which had been developed as a function of all of that communication. And the really important insight here is not, we're not solving all the world's problems, but a classic problem is the one we were facing, which was it was just a data organization issue. We were going to a trade show, we'd done it in the past, and the fact is that you spend a bunch of money to do these things, and what really matters is the efficiency and the clarity of your communication with those prospects. And we were able to manage that and execute on in a totally different way, and be in a much different place 1 week later than we were compared to every other trade show we'd ever done, which usually took a month of organizing that stuff. And that was and I think the really, my brother and I actually had a meeting about that particular thing that was created because it wasn't me. It wasn't me. At this point in what we're doing, it was the salespeople. They thought of it. They thought of how they wanted to organize it, and they executed on it. And everybody, anybody who's running a business and is listening to this recognizes the problem of sitting in a meeting and having to come up with the ideas, and then you have a group of people who then go implement them. And one of the changes that we've seen with Kenandy now is that people have become empowered enough to begin to do these things on their own. And that trade show object, that was a terrific example of really 80% of it came out of sales. And there was a little bit of guidance that I offered to try to make it work. And it worked. And it was simple and a totally different outcome from what we've seen in the past. It was pretty neat.
No, I thought that was a really cool example. Just, in a sense, it's a utility as much as a core operational part of your business, and I think that's pretty cool. Two last things. I know we're running a little over what we were hoping to do, but I always think this is fascinating, so I'm going to monopolize everybody's time for a couple more minutes. One thing I'd like to hear about is how do the employees feel about Kenandy? I mean, is it just this mysterious thing out there someplace, or do they see it firsthand? They think about Kenandy and how they talk about it, how they view it.
So the question is an interesting one to answer. Nobody likes change. Maybe somebody does, but I haven't met them yet. Most people, when you change something, they get upset about it, and especially, if you look at a purchasing department, you change the fields that they have on their item. They don't react kindly to it. Flexibility in a system is not something that people generally embrace and enjoy. And the interesting thing with Kenandy is that we recognized it at the very beginning that people didn't like seeing their screens change. So we took away individuals' responsibility for updating or changing their screen. So purchasing for a year and a half couldn't change their item. What happened is people began to understand that they could report on all parts of their job functions, and they could look at what they were doing differently. And as they became more comfortable with reporting, they became more interested in adding information that would then let them do different things, report on different things. And it was this, and this took a while, but it was this transition from recognizing that they could report on in their world to then adjust what they were doing and report out in a more in-depth way that created the perspective that most people have with Kenandy today. And that is, I think, to a person, people are amazed at how much information they're able to get back out of the system, and they look at Kenandy as a data sponge, as this place where they can put stuff, so that they can sit in a meeting with my brother and I and show us what's actually going on with their part of the business. And they don't look at it as software. I don't think anybody sits down and says, "Oh, I've got to log into that Kenandy system." They look at it as, I should bring people in and have them answer the question. But the purchasing department is responsible as much for getting all the purchasing done and taking care of things as they are giving us data back about what's going on and why. And they've become purchasing users of Kenandy. They look at Kenandy as this purchasing program. And the people in customer service look at it as this customer service program. And the people in sales don't know the difference between Salesforce and Kenandy. They look at it as a sales program. So it's an interesting and complicated answer, but no one has the same perception of Kenandy or thinks of Kenandy as this software. Everybody has it kind of specially configured into their own world, and we've given them back now almost to a person the opportunity to be able to add fields and do these sorts of things, unless they can't do reporting. Anybody who isn't capable of reporting isn't allowed this privilege, because it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, it's a complicated answer, but it's a really different one. It's not a piece of software. It's a very specialized thing in each area now, and people have become very dependent on it. Especially.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So, quick answer. Maybe tell us. It's always interesting to me. You have all these different businesses. Could you tell us a little bit about some of these other businesses you've created?
Yeah. So the 800-pound gorilla here is that Kenandy supports Merrow Sewing Machine Company, selling to 86 countries, making sewing machines, and we are broad and deep, and we have all of the problems of a major multinational company with the resources of a pretty small business. On top of that, we now have these other companies, and one of the really great things about Kenandy is that we've been able to compartmentalize the new businesses inside of Kenandy in a way that lets us see exactly what's going on with them and manage them significantly differently from one another, while at the same time there not being any hard lines. It's one system, so I can roll everything up into one report to see what we've sold for the day, and I can break it up into much smaller pieces if I need to do with individual P&Ls. But here's the quick overview. We added to the business we created a fulfillment center and built a small fulfillment center and built an online hardware store that turned it's an all online presence, and everything's integrated in with Kenandy, and we do it's become a significant business for us, and it's entirely a software play. So it's an online business integrated in with Kenandy, and we do the fulfillment here. We have an apparel business. We build merino wool apparel, and we manufacture it in Turkey, bring it over, and we distribute it in U.S. and Europe right now. And this has the parts of the system that we use for this are largely the communication pieces, inventory-based communication. When somebody's product comes in for a reseller, we're notifying them and using Kenandy for its communication backbone. We have a business. We're in the thread business. We're in the sewing machine spare parts business. We have a new business in building safety technology. So we have actually this summer is really interesting. We have a group of interns out there. We've got 6 interns, and they're building integrated apparel safety products. So we're developing a line of safety products that integrate in with your shirts and your pants. And I saw that Google had Google introduced their new technology fiber at their Google I/O, and there's no doubt in my mind that by next fall, lots of the apparel that we're going to have will be able to integrate with products like we're making here. So we're using the engineering organization backbone of Kenandy to build these products and keep all these interns organized and develop these new things. So we have this very rangy. The point is, Rod, it's all over the place, and there aren't, and on purpose, there are not necessarily synergies between any of the businesses. They're there because we have an idea and a vision, and we have some money to spend on it. We think we can get a return, and it's organized individually for Kenandy. And this is where the concept of being able to customize the software to match the business is really important. Because I think our perspective is that of a raw startup in some cases. Hey, we have just ideas, and now we need to turn them into things, and so we're just focused on product development and trying to keep the spend as low as we can in order to get something into market. To the other side, which is Merrow, where we have the entrenched business that's able to grind day in and day out and needs to grow itself 10% a year. And we need to be focused on efficiencies, not necessarily that get it up and going. And we haven't even touched on another part of Kenandy that I've been meaning to mention to you, but the communication piece is turning out to be a very important part of what we're able to do. And the 30-second version, I promised, Stuart, of the communication piece is that as we're collecting all this information about customers, and this is a little bit of the Salesforce side, but you develop all these different leads and then all of these different accounts, and you're doing different types of business you're selling different types of products. Well, it's natural that you would have very specific types of communication, which would go out to people who are interested in something very specific. And we're using Kenandy to organize all of that information and integrate it with MailChimp to push out very small e-blasts. So getting rid of the idea, our mailing list is, I think we have 60,000 people in a mailing list. Enough of the days of sending all 60,000 people an email. Why? They don't all want the same email. I mean, I don't know if anyone wants any of my emails, but they all don't want the same thing. We have so much information in Kenandy about what they're interested in or what we're talking to them about or these types of things that we're using the powerful reporting behind Kenandy to integrate in with MailChimp to send out little teeny blasts, 1,000-person blasts, 200-person blasts. And that's driven by this kind of incredible appetite that Kenandy has for devouring data and then helping regurgitate it back out to us in a meaningful way. And so that communication piece across all of these different projects and companies is becoming a very strategic and interesting one. Oh, anyway, I'll I'll back it off. Sorry.
Oh, that's great. That's great. No, again, it's interesting to us to see. First of all, I think it's fantastic for us to be on this platform where it's not only that we can bring you the ERP, but CRM component, this part that does the sales, is helping you with the marketing, to give you one home that you can live in instead of a bunch of separate apps all over the place, God knows where, I think is an exciting piece of this. So I love the fact that you take advantage of all the elements of the platform across the board. And you know, the other part of this again is I'm always amazed by the innovation unleashed with this, and you guys are particularly innovative. It's always interesting to check in with you and see what you're up to next. But we see this with other customers too. And that I was talking to somebody that was in the synergy business yesterday, and it was amazing how they've shortened their R&D cycle by just doing some very good things, and how they integrate with Kenandy, and how they basically innovate something in the morning and basically ordering all the appropriate parts in the afternoon. And those kinds of things are really cool. The only last thing I want to say before we switch to today is I'm going to just do a little plug for one of your products. And I did get an opportunity to see the Merrow wall products. And I gotta find out and get those, because those are really cool, and I'm glad you finally got them in production and out there. I was there and I saw the samples, and I thought they were cool, and I want some of that for myself. That aside,
I'll see if I can make that happen for you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Rod and Charlie. This was a great dialogue. I'd like to open this up to any questions. If any out there has any questions, you can enter them through the GoToWebinar navigation bar, and then we'll delegate to the speaker.